One thing that really struck out to me was your passion for dance, your passion for life.
A lot of women actually, and this is something I face in my dancing space, is a lot of families don't actually support the women to pursue art.
How did you meet your partner, and how did this journey to Australia come about?
Where can I go and start my journey again? I'll continue my journey. I wasn't dancing then. I took a little break for a year or two, and I was really struggling.
Namaste and welcome to Indian Women Abroad, a podcast where we share stories of migrant Indian women who've moved to different countries across the globe. For today's episode, I have with me Deepa. Deepa is the founder of the Chandralaya School of Dance and has over 30 years of experience in traditional Bharatanatyam and contemporary styles. She is also the teaching artist at the Song Room in Regional Arts Victoria in Australia and the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in the United States. Apart from her long and illustrious career, she has also just launched her second brand called POC Beauty, which puts diversity at the forefront of its mission. Welcome to the show, Deepa.
Thank you so much, Brunel, for having me. Such a pleasure to be here.
So I remember the first time that I saw you was actually on the big screen.
Oh, yes.
At the screening of Invisible Founders. And one thing that really struck out to me was your passion for dance, your passion for life, and the way you put it forward on the screen. That was just so impressive. So I'm just interested in knowing where your passion for dance stems from.
My passion started way back when I was a little child, about 5.5, but I didn't know it was a passion. Mm-hmm. It was something that came from my mother, who was very much, she was growing up interested in the art side, both music and dance. But at a very tender age, she couldn't pursue it for a long time. And when her father passed away, when she was in the medicinal field, she had to take up the responsibilities for the rest of the household. And so when she had me, I think she had already decided that, I'm just going to make sure I put her into arts and see how this goes. And I didn't know this until when I grew up. The story was told to me by her. When I first joined my class with my first guru back in India, I literally cried for about 6-7 months every single day. Like, this is not what I want to do. But you got to keep at it. And the only thing my parents told me was, do it for 6 months. And if it doesn't work, well, you can do something else. And I never looked back. Mm-hmm. So it was so beautiful to be in a community of people just dance away. And those days I felt like it was a bit more easier because we didn't do 10 or 20 activities. Mm-hmm. So the interest in looking up to my guru and watching her dance and showing all these expressions and talking about culture really started to imbibe in me. And for some reason, I never stopped dancing. So everywhere I went, every continent I went, the first thing I would do is, when I look for a job, I would be like, is there a dance studio? Who is my next guru? Where can I invest my time in? Mm-hmm. And that's really how the passion just grew. And when I moved to Melbourne, the first thing I did was, where can I go and start my journey again? I'll continue my journey. And I think that really started to inculcate in me. And eventually I felt like I've got a decent amount of knowledge to be able to give it out to the next generation. I think it's important not to just keep it within you. Art needs to be sent out more in order for it to relive and live through the generations to come. So that's really how passion stuck to me.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm just going to take a step back, because you said you took it with you to every continent that you went to. And because this podcast is called Indian Women Abroad, I'm interested in knowing how your journey, went from being in India to the US that I know of, and then to Australia. Like, could you walk us through that?
Sure. I did my early education back in South India, Chennai, which is where I was born. Mm-hmm. And I did my bachelor's in engineering in Chennai. And all through the time I was dancing, and my first graduation, which we call as Arangetram or Ranga Pravesham, happened in Chennai in 97. That's when I really did the whole 7 to 13 years of learning. And then I moved to the States for my master's. And then I was part of a dance company, a South Asian dance company, which was run by a Pakistani. Such a beautiful company, and I was one of the lead dancers in there, that's when my first introduction to contemporary happened. So I was doing Bharatanatyam and contemporary and bridging, which was absolutely beautiful to watch in the landscape of United States artistic journey, because I was in Washington DC, which is very artsy in nature, and there's always something happening 365 days. So performed in all of the beautiful venues in the East Coast, and also did quite a bit of travel across the States to go and do workshops and things like that. And then, I moved to Melbourne when I married my husband, and I continued my journey here under my guru, Chandralaya, Dr. Chandralaya, who is Melbourne-based, and was under him for a few years and productions with him. And 2018 is when I said I'm going to kick off my journey into teaching full-time, and that's when Chandralaya was really born. So I haven't looked back since.
Well, that's actually very interesting. Just with your journey in the US, I'm interested in knowing, like you said, that there were so many events and so many places. Is there any moment that really stands out to you that I wish I could relive that was really special?
Oh, so many. I think that the continent is so big, and there's so many opportunities, and there's so many varieties there. And I was we were a standing company in performing for Fringe every single year. So the DC Fringe, Fringe is quite popular around the world. So DC Fringe is really, really popular, and we would be booked out for like 5 to 6 shows every single year, really traveling through the venues in DC and really showcasing new works. And we would get a kick out of that. It would be completely different. So every time the audience came to see us, they would see a new piece of work, something to do with everyday affairs versus bringing traditionalism back into the modernity. And I think the constant arena that was created to perform, as well as be able to manage that corporate life, I think that was just a blessing. And I would love to keep doing that, which I think I am doing that to some extent here. But I think there was a lot more of that, and there's a lot more collaborations happening then. I'm talking about early 2000s. This was happening, which I think was very, very important for an artist like myself to really nurture and grow in that space. I think I really held that close to my heart, because that's what's really helped me to give back to the community, to the next generations.
And you just mentioned that you were balancing your corporate life as well. What was that experience like? Did you have a good work-life balance? Was your work very supportive of your passions? Did they have a dance studio like you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, look, back in the States, I was doing a consulting job, and I was actually working for the federal government. And it was a very good understanding. So this is like early 2005-06. I wish I could do that here, but those days shows would happen in this lunchtime, sometimes 12 to 1 or 12 to 2. So I would just talk to my manager or my boss and say, look, I've got a show happening. Is it okay if I can just go perform and come back and then actually work? And they were very flexible, and they would even come and watch me perform during their lunch break, and then they would know I would come back in a couple of hours and be in front of the computer and do my work. So it was a very great understanding I had. As long as the job was done within the time frame, I was very lucky that my bosses never had a issue with that. And I think they liked the fact that I was able to balance that, and that brought me a lot of joy, and I was able to bring it back to work. There were a lot of times I would have my hands painted in the morning, and then I would be like, working, and then I'll be like, okay, it's 12. I'm just going to go for a quick couple of hours and come back, and then I'll be like half makeup taken. I'll be like, it doesn't really matter. It was actually really fun to do that, but it was it was manageable because I wasn't married, I didn't have a child, so it was really easy to sort of juggle that those days. But yeah, I loved every minute of it.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, especially given the years that you're talking about, the 2000s, the mid 2000s, and remote work and flexible working, it's something that probably the younger generation relates to since after COVID.
Yeah.
So to know that you had that sort of support from your workplace, your colleagues, your managers, that's very interesting. And it just brings me to the next question now that you've talked about your family. How did you meet your partner, and how did this journey to Australia to come about?
So I actually know my now husband then because we went to the same engineering college, but we hadn't spoken a lot. We knew each other existed. We've got connections through our friends who were more closer, and he's just a year senior to me in engineering. And then once we finished engineering, he left to Australia and I left to the States, and we never talked. And the concept of arranged marriage comes into play here.
Okay.
And it was when my parents said, we've got this really nice prospect, which is always how it comes to you. Do you want to have a conversation? And I said, okay, just we can talk about it. Where is he? Is he in America? It's like, no, he's in Australia. And I was like, what? No way, I'm moving to because then in Australia, it was being in America then. They would never talk good about any other country. Let's face it. And particularly Australia, I think then it was, I don't know who was the Prime Minister, but it was very much, always had a negative connotation in the news if we had to mention about it. Yeah. And it was like there's a lot of animals, wild animals and things like that. So everybody was like, okay, well, this is what you're talking about, then, what's the point? And then when I spoke to my partner and he said, you really have to get there to see the beautiful place that this country is, this continent is. And we started to talk and we discussed, because we knew each other from 10 years ago. And we found a lot of similarities and things like that. But I had to make the decision to leave the States to make that move, to come and re-establish myself in Melbourne. That was a hard decision to do, again, to uproot myself for the second time and then come back. But the first thing I said, and the first thing I told him was, just like any successful woman would be like, if I were to move to Melbourne, you better be worth it. And he still remembers that till today. And he said that this is what you said, and I don't regret. He's a wonderful man, very supportive of my journeys, and I'm really happy that I moved to this country, which has a beautiful balance that sometimes it's hard to get in a country like States.
Right. And just when your parents said that there's this prospect, did you know that he was your senior, or did you meet him and you realized, oh, we were in engineering college together?
No, we knew. I knew straight away who he was, because one of his friend's sister is actually my close friend back in high school. So I knew straight away who I was dealing with. But when you hadn't seen a person for about 10 years, a decade, you don't know what to expect. You just remember them from the good old days. You don't really know how far they've transformed themselves. So I had to give the benefit of the doubt and have a conversation. And it's been really good.
Oh, that's good. And when you moved to Australia, what was your reaction? Was it all animals?
Look, it was a shock, let me tell you that, because the pace was much slower, which I hadn't been used to. So coming all the way from DC, which was buzzing, and they're really 5 steps ahead, to re-establish myself, to understand what's this balance that I need to bring back into this new life that I've created. Took me a while, and the best thing is my husband was like, you've just got to take your time and really look what you want, and then everything can sort of fall in place. So it took me a while to understand the pace is okay and you will settle down.
Right.
But that was a culture shock. And there was also a shock in terms of culture because there was so much happening in culture. And then in 2009, there was some elements of it, but not that heavy duty that I was used to. Mm-hmm. So that took a while to get used to as well. But over time, you adjust and you make the most of everything you have.
And how did the transition work-wise go as well? Was it easy for you to find a job? And were they supportive of your passions?
Yeah.
Like your managers back?
So in Australia, I think everybody was laid back, which was not not something that I was used to.
Right.
But that really spawned on me, and I was like, okay, this is a really cool attitude. This life is a bit more easier than what I thought. It doesn't have to be push, and So I told myself, I gave myself usually the 90 days, and obviously when you touch down in another country, you always need to get your first break, and your first break can take 3 months, 6 months. So I went back into my IT space and really looked for my continuity there, and at the same time also looked for my next guru. And that's when I stumbled upon Dr. Chandralaya, and I started to train under him, and then I got a job. My first job was actually at University of Melbourne.
Okay.
In the IT space, and I grew from there and moved from different organizations. That's pretty much what it is. But I think I was able to still create that balance of working that 9 to 5 and then going into classes on Mondays and Saturdays and sort of really enjoying that journey and then performing during the weekends. That was bliss for me.
And was it easy to manage, with your personal life as well? Because a lot of people have this, I wouldn't say misconception, but there's this stereotype of, oh, you don't have maids in a foreign country, you don't have any help, it's just the couple living together or the kids. So how do you manage that when you're working 9 to 5 and you've also got, a passion that you want to pursue alongside? Say you want to spend time with your family, you have to talk to your family back home, and there's just so much you have to do around the house as well. How was that experience like for you? How did you manage that?
So I think because I moved at a very young age, when I was probably 20, to the States, I had to become independent to do my own cooking and have roommates and enjoy that. So transitioning from there to another continent was not too different, but this time you're living with your husband and actually providing as well as managing all of that. So that sort of thing was not harder for me because I do love cooking and my husband cooks as well. So we sort of spent the time really cooking and learning about each other. I think the juggle is real, whether you have a child or not in today's time, because work is very hectic as well as keeping your passion to go is a juggle. So I think finding that balance was a lot. It took a while. It took a while to sort of set that. I think organization skill is very important. Dedicating those classes and then working out how many programs or performances you would want to tie up to, things like that, as well as having a social life, right, which is very important. I think it's a matter of just working that through with your partner and sort of really saying, because one thing was a given when I actually got married to my husband. He said, I am not stopping dancing. So that is a given. So if you're happy to support me, I'm happy to get into this next phase with you. And so he knew the minute he signed up for this, like, she's not going to stop dancing. In fact, it's only going to get bigger. So he was absolutely game for that. He said, you drive your passion, I drive mine, and we are in this journey. So I think that was a driver for me to create a balance.
Well, that's beautiful. I think one of the things that I've heard repeatedly from women who've really happy with how their lives have turned out in a different country is that they've had a very supportive partner and a very supportive family as well.
Yes.
And I think that's also changing in today's time, because we've heard stories of women who were not supported by their family or their husbands, or faced challenges with their kids, but they had to do it all alone. But with the present generation, we feel like women have also become very vocal about what they need and what they want in a relationship. And it's especially very true for women who are living abroad,
Yeah.
because they've seen other women around them who might come from different communities, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, about how they manage around the house, and just putting it out there as it is. Do you think that that's true?
Look, I think there are families who struggle with that balance, and the thing that I've seen is a lot of women actually, and this is something I face in my dancing space, is a lot of families don't actually support the women to pursue art, particularly dance, because it has a negative connotation based on what's been established over the history. So, and then when that happens, the woman actually can't get herself to go to the studio or pursue the dance, any art form for that matter, any dance, particularly art form. And the parents are like, you can't do this, don't do this, because you have to focus on certain things. And I think I say to them that if you're going to curb somebody, you're only going to limit the wellness that this woman is going to bring into your family. So I think it's important to understand that from a very communal perspective, from a strategic perspective. And if you restrict somebody, it's only going to work to your negative impact. It's never going to be a positive thing. So I think you let the woman thrive by working on their strengths. And if that strength is to follow that passion, so be it. Because when her bucket is full, she's going to make sure that family is taken care of. And that's how that would be my way to go about it, and to tell those families who are really struggling with that balance. And I would say the same thing to the partner. I think nothing is going to happen if your wife or partner is wanting to spend some time in a community that she thrives in, because she's going to come home being very happy and elated, because her glass is full. When her glass is empty, she's not going to be a happy person. And then a happy wife is a happy life. So why do you want to compromise that?
Well, that's true. And I think you also raise a very important point about, women being happy. A lot of times, we read stories about, like, you just have to go to a social media platform,
Yes.
and you'd see women complaining in forums that they don't, sometimes have help, or they're missing home, or, if they're not working in the corporate side of things in an office, but they're just doing things around the house, they're not meeting people. So there's this sense of loneliness that also comes in. So not allowing them, but encouraging them to pursue their passions is also very important from a wellness perspective. We always read stories about how loneliness levels are increasing, depression, and just so many other illnesses. But having them to a community that allows you to pursue your passion and even just meet new people.
Yep.
Whether it's people from the South Asian community or even from different countries, that's also something that's very beneficial to them and for their overall happiness in a different country.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's one aspect that people just forget about, because back home you have a very different community, and here you have to make a very active
Effort.
Exactly. And how was that like for you? Because you came from a different country, from a different continent, and then your partner probably had a social circle of his own. How did you go about building your circle?
That's a great question, because it's a massive change for any woman who moves to another continent to reestablish her identity. I think it's all about her identity. So the way I went about it is, firstly, my husband is quite grounded, and he says, take your time and you don't have to jump into anything. Obviously, he did the real right thing by introducing myself into his social circles, and I found my way to see who I gel with from a first energy perspective. And then you sort of really figure out your circle by getting a job. You have a bunch of workmates, and then obviously because of my art form, I went into the school and I had a bunch of dance mates, and then your circle slowly sort of expands. I think it's important to understand that it is a journey, so it's going to come about in its own time, and it's about creating those circles in time. And it is still painful, trust me, because you have to, when you got an entire circle in another continent, and then you've got to, and we're not getting younger, we're getting older. So, and then we start to see, okay, who can I gel with? You start to really curb yourself. My advice was always to my students as well, I tell them, you just have an open mind. And whoever you gel with, you start to establish a relationship, and you don't force yourself into anything. And don't have these, I have to make so many friends in a year, I've got to do this. Don't have that, because the assimilation takes time. Right. And having that cultural aspect and really understanding the other side. And I also tell you have to expand your circle beyond your ethnic group. It's so important, primarily because if you're establishing yourself in a Western society and that's not your predominant culture, it's so important to really spread your wings and actually have an understanding of the other side, because the other side wouldn't understand you unless you had the conversation and exchange culturally. And so I always tell my students, like, always expand your circle beyond your ethnic groups. And that's what I did. So I slowly started to see where my friends are. And I have a bunch of mates that I've known for 15 years now. But that didn't come easy. That came over time. So I think it's always important to have an open mind and really let time take its course and have a positive attitude towards people. Although it's not easy, and I think that will keep you sort of sane and more grounded, particularly when you're in another country.
Yeah, that's actually very good advice. And just to go a little deeper on that, when it comes to interacting with someone who's from a different background, some people don't feel very comfortable.
Yes.
It's probably because of our history as well. Sometimes we have some sort of colonial hangover, or there's this inferiority complex for some people. What would be your advice if they're facing any challenges in doing that?
Look, that's a really good question, because there's a lot of unconscious bias we have. And everybody has that. If you're born as a human, you have that. It's about how much you tailor that and have an open mind. And we all have that. I think my advice is really get comfortable to get uncomfortable. And that's really how you get to become, that's really how you grow, mindset-wise. So if you're going to curb yourself, you'll always only have a certain amount of boundary that you create. But if you want to extend your boundary, you have to start to tip into the next layers. And the next layers are going to be harder, because guess what? They're not part of your comfort zone. But that's okay. It's like changing a habit. So if I'm brushing my teeth on the right side and I choose to brush my teeth on the left side, it's obviously going to be uncomfortable because I'm used to it. But when I start to do that for a couple of days, I now neurologically repattern my mind. That's exactly the same way so really getting comfortable to get uncomfortable, having that little conversation. It can happen in bite sizes. Like, food is such an integral part of our being. So having a conversation around food can have a cultural exchange. That could be on a comfort level. Cooking a little meal and inviting somebody to your house would be absolutely in a comfortable space. And asking questions about the other's culture and asking, I'm curious to understand, where did this come from? That really creates that beautiful exchange of information. And I think that's when relationships are really formed or even get stronger. The binding happens. And I think it's so important for women, particularly when they move from India to here, is to just hang on to that tradition, at the same time open themselves to share that with the other side. But when you share, you're going to get something and you're going to give something. And so be prepared to give so you can actually receive. And I'm not saying take, I'm saying receive, which is such a different partnership there. So I think that's what I would say. Yeah.
Well, that's really great. And get comfortable to get uncomfortable. That could be a T-shirt.
Yeah,
that
should be
that
actually.
I would love to wear. Such a beautiful
Thank you.
advice and such a beautiful line. I think that's gonna stick with me for a long time. And just with your family, you now have kids in the mix. How has that changed, dynamics around your relationship, or how you manage your time, especially with Chandralaya, and even before that as well, when you had your corporate career, you still do?
No, I actually don't.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
managing two business itself is a lot.
Yeah. Well, so how did you go about managing that? A lot of people say that motherhood, especially in a country, in a different country for an Indian woman, can be very difficult because you don't have that sort of support system, and we do know that it takes a village. So
100%.
who was your village, and how did you manage everything?
I think my family and my friends, my partner, my family, my friends. When the little one was really little, taking enough breaks, really making use of the maternity leave that Australian economy has. The Australian health system is a lot better than back in the States. I know a lot of my friends get back to work in 3 months after they have a baby, but in Australia you have 12 months, and sometimes you can extend it to about 24 months. I think that's such a beautiful system we have here, and that time is important to nurture oneself as well as with the child. And then I did do a mistake of going 5 days, like everybody does, and I do regret that. Let me tell you that. But my advice to women is, please take it easy and go in part-time. There's no hurry, because the problem is your immune system gets impacted. 5 days of work and battling, childcare, and then the child is obviously going to bring a little bit more, bugs, but that impacts you because mother's immune system takes a couple of years to really, fine tune. And during that time, it's important to really nurture yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually. So getting back into the game. And I know it's not easy for every family. Every family has their own limitations. But if you can, 3 days and then slowly giving in would really ease that. So that was my lessons learned. I think it is my family, like my both parents came in and helped, and childcare. Like, if not for childcare, I don't know what we would do. So I'm really hats off to all the women out there working for childcare. They take care of your child from 9 to 5 while you can do your work. So that is a very important profession. And partner support, and in terms of juggling, I think the juggle is real, plus you need to have a good organization skill in terms of really positioning how much can you do in 24 hours. And some things have to wait. The advice I give my older students is you can do everything, but not at the same time. That's for sure, because certain things have to happen at a certain point in time, and you can't just hurry up and do everything, because that's not sustainable. You will break down eventually. And the first thing is going to be compromised is your health. When if you don't have health, you really can't move around. We underestimate the simple things. When you have a terrible cough and cold, you just can't do anything. You're just so stuck. So the important thing was to prioritize health and try and list out what can be done for that year. What are my goals, and really stick to that. And then I've gotten better in saying no.
Okay.
It has not been easy, but I've gotten better in saying no, because keeping your peace is very important, more so for women.
Yeah. And I feel, especially from the sort of background that we come from, saying no is so difficult for us.
Yeah, it's like a taboo. It's a hard one. We're wired so differently. It's the days of wiring, generations. It's not easy to come out of it, but the generation these days, the narrative is changing. And I think we need to really listen well, listen hard, and rewire ourselves. things can wait, and it's not about people pleasing. At the end of the day, you can please as many people, but if you're not happy, there's no point. So
I think sometimes it's not just even people pleasing. Like personally, no, I have a very supportive partner. But sometimes when I know he's working and I'm working as well, and I've got the podcast, and he says, "Oh, I'll cook, lunch or dinner or whatever it is," I feel guilty. That
I know, yeah.
oh, you're working as well. So it's just the way that we've been wired, that you feel, oh, but then when you think back on it, or sometimes he has to explain it to me, that, well, you're working as well. So it's literally the same thing. If I've got the time, I've got it. So just that shift of mindset, it, but sometimes it subconsciously just hits you out of nowhere that, what am I doing?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head on that point, because that is a struggle, not just for Indian women, general women in general, because we're so wired to nurture and to provide for the family, and with the recent generations, like, work has become a top priority. So really trying to cram everything. That was never the case ages ago.
Right.
So women were there, they had the free time to do what they do best, which is nurture. We can still do that, but I think we just need to, we're too hard on ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. And what if one night you're not cooking and you do a takeaway, or you have a salad, or you give that opportunity for your partner or husband to do that chore for you, and sit back and relax the output of that. That's a different feeling rather than feeling guilty. The mum guilt is very common across women of all ethnicities. But the thing that is important to understand is, if a woman wants to achieve all the goals, something has to give. And it's up to us to decide what is going to be given. And that's a very important, that's where the concept of balance comes into play. And we all struggle with that. The first thing to do is to acknowledge it, be mindful of it, and do something about it. So I think that's really important, but it's a really great point. I think we all struggle with that. I'm guilty of that too. I've had situations where my partner would sit me down and say, "You don't have to do everything. You can just, the house doesn't have to be mopped. The house doesn't have to be clean. It's fine. You could use that time and just put your leg up and just watch a movie and just relax. What is stopping you?" And I'm like, me. Me. I'm stopping myself.
You'd be watching it and still thinking about, I could have been doing something else.
Brains are going like that. And it's like, why? Just stop. Don't think.
Right.
And running two businesses, you can imagine how the head's exploding. And then child pickup, what to cook. And I just tell myself, like, if I can find, I do that every day, but for about 5-10 minutes, I just sit back and do nothing. Like, I just try to freeze my mind, because it's obviously, my to-do list is never over.
Yeah.
You've got to draw that line somewhere on an everyday basis. Draw that line hard and bold. That's it. I'm shutting down. I'm not going to do anything, because the child is growing, and you're going to miss out on having that little conversation. But when you look at it, 10 years, 20 years have passed, and the kid is already 19, and they don't get to spend that time with you. So I think it's a very hard wiring that women particularly have to make on an everyday basis. It's practice, but it can be done.
Yeah, it can be. I was actually watching a podcast by Mel Robbins, and she talked about this brain dump, because we just carry so much mental load. So you just make a list of all the things that you're supposed to do, even if it's, calling someone and things like that. Just put it out on paper, and it actually just relieves you of
100%.
So much stress, because once you've got it out. So I've started doing this weekly, brain dump, and I just cross out the things that I am not going to get to it this week. But just the act of crossing it out
gives you pleasure.
It just gives you so much. It just relieves so much pressure from your brain that I don't have to do that. So you can just simply forget about it. And I think it also speaks to the health and wellness aspect of what you've been saying. that you have to take care of your physical health, your mental health, spiritually as well. So for you, what does that look like, nourishing yourself spiritually and mentally?
A few things. Keeping my workouts going, that's for physical. Try to get my dancing a couple of times a week and doing a little bit of usual exercise pattern that I have. I think that's really important to set the tone for the day for me. I try and meditate. I'm not the best, but I at least close my eyes and just sort of really focus on manifesting a good day forward. That's something I do. Mentally, I think I tried to keep any negativity out. So I've got this thing that I try and cancel out anything that's not going to be productive for my well-being, and really take my meals on time. Like really focus on taking those meals on time, and then working through nourishing myself inside, working on good foods, and then social, like meet friends, talk to people, talk to family, talk to child, just have a little bit of a laugh or be silly, and things like that. And maybe, on a Friday night, have a glass of bubbles and just sort of relax a bit. That's a combination, I would say. Just a combination of doing that repeatedly just keeps me more balanced to do the things that I do.
Yeah. So it's basically a combination of having a very social circle, wholesome food, and wholesome activities.
Yes.
That would keep you really engaged and happy.
It's a very holistic journey we all are undergoing, and it's not one particular solution that's going to work for you forever. And you've got to do all of these bits because there's several elements that you have to nurture. And as women, as we get into the next phase of our life after childbirth and everything, it's more important to nurture yourself inside out, because our physiological changes are a lot, and we need to make sure that the investment we're doing in this holistic journey is to keep us really healthy for the next 30 years. So if you think about that kind of investment, you actually will put that time and effort to do that consistently, because it's the next 30 years you're talking about, not tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful, and I think a very wonderful perspective to take a look at it, because sometimes we leave a lot of things for the future, and next day the future is already here.
Yeah.
And that time has just passed you by. So you shouldn't be letting yourself do that, especially as women, because it's very easy to just get in that rut, be in that routine, and put yourself second or last in your list.
I would say always be selfish. Put yourself first, because if you're not happy, people around you are not happy.
Yeah.
That's it.
Perfect. So Deepa, now let's talk about Chandralaya.
Yes.
How did that come about, and what was just your journey, your experience like to bring it to life? I'd love to know more about that.
Thank you. Chandralaya was named after my late mother. So her name is Chandraprabha, and I wanted to really pay tribute to her because it's because of my parents I'm doing what I'm doing today. So that was based on her. They always say skills are transferable, so the corporate skills really came into handy when I wanted to start a business. And I just went about, this was in 2018 when I don't think Instagram was that famous.
Yeah,
probably just starting up, and Facebook was still thriving. I remember I was handing out pamphlets everywhere to talk about the school and things like that. So I really wanted to establish a school that had holistic journey embedded in there, and the heart of what we do had to be about collaboration and really making sure there is a strong sense of identity created in people's mind when they come to learn this art form. So those were some of the values. So it was very much those values-driven school. But I didn't always want to have a school that was only teaching Bharatanatyam. I wanted to have a school that does a few verticals, like for example, really not. The thing is, it's very important to understand, because when you're sitting in a Western country and teaching an Indian art form or any ethnic art form that is not the representation of that country, you want to make sure you are going beyond your community. Because the reach has to be there. Yes, you reach your community because that's your core audience, but there are people beyond that who needs to be aware of it. And in Australia, when multiculturalism is at it's growing and it's at its peak, to be honest, it's important to branch out and have conversations with other artists, with other creatives, with other creative organizations to talk about what kind of collaboration we could do. We've got this beautiful art form that we could collaborate and really bump up the diversity factor in the country. And so that was when I started to branch out to organizations like Regional Victoria, Creative Victoria, Song Room, Cultural Infusion, and working with other commissions, other companies who bring together artistic commissions, really putting Bharatanatyam in the mix and saying that we could actually really work together because there's so many synergies happening. So that was one of the important verticals I was working on. So slowly I started to build these multiple verticals in order to engage audiences and really promote the cultural factor of the Indian subcontinent. I think the main thing is obviously teaching the art form, but beyond that, I think it's also working with other people, other ethnic groups. So that's really how Chandralaya has grown over the last 7 years now. Yeah.
And when you started the school, did you leave your corporate job? Were you like 100% in, or did you have a safety net?
No, I did not actually. I remember my then boss was like, I know you want to do this. Can you just do this for 3 months and come back? And I was like, no, I don't think so, because I think I just need to put my mind into it and I can always come back into it. But I didn't want to have a leg here and leg there. And that could also really not help drive that more. So I would still be in a backward pedaling.
Right.
So I said, I'm just going to quit and I'm just going to see how I go. Once I set it up, I could always jump back into it, which I did. I started to do consulting jobs once it was stabilized. When I knew what my hours were, how many hours it would take to run classes and do admin work and things like that, I went back into consulting. I balanced that out. So I did have a safety net because I was working full-time leading up to that. And with my partner's support, I said, I'm just going to plunge into this and see what happens. I'm young. Let me just, if I fail, I fail.
So what was that one moment where I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm 100% in. Was there a moment where you felt that, or was it, a journey that led up to it?
I think it was a series of moments. It just added up over time. It was also because my son was a driver as well, because I was full-time working and I wasn't dancing then. I took a little break for a year or two and I was really struggling health-wise. I was falling sick very often. This little one would bring all the bugs to me. He would get better in 2 days. I would sit around 10 days still being sick. And this is a vicious cycle. This is not ending. I'm not happy. And I used to throw myself 70 hours in the corporate space. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, where is my purpose? And my husband's like, why aren't you doing anything about dance? And I was like, oh, ta-da! And then when I started Chandralaya, every one of my friends who knew I'm a dancer would look at me and say, this is high time. You should have started this 10 years ago. I said, no, that was not the time. There's a time and place for everything. This is the time. The motherhood really helped me narrow down my business passion. And that's when I said, okay, that's it. This is it. So it was sometime actually in Feb 2018, which is when I decided, okay, I'm just going to call it quits. I'm going to give my 4 weeks or 6 weeks, and then I'm just going to throw myself and see what happens. So it was leading up to that. It was actually a lot after motherhood happened that I made that decision.
That's interesting. I've heard actually a lot of women, after they've become mothers, their priorities and how they look at career also shifts.
Yes.
There's this, mindset shift and perspective of how you're just looking at life as a whole. And a lot of women in those journeys actually end up, founding really great businesses or some products that actually changes
100%.
lives of communities. And I think that's very powerful and speaks so highly of, the kind of talent and the passion and innovation that motherhood actually brings
Yes,
into
100%.
the community.
Couldn't agree more.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing. But you say you founded Chandralaya in 2018, and I can't help but wonder, COVID hit after say 2 years. How did you deal with that? How was it challenging? I know people were doing like online classes
Yes.
and things like that, but did that ever make you doubt your decision? That was it the right step?
Look, I'm going to be honest. I say yes, because when COVID hit, I was like, maybe it's time to shut down. This is not going to work. What's going to happen? And then I said to myself, what would you do from a corporate standpoint? What is your business continuity plan? Let's think about that. And I said, well, there is Zoom. We did have Zoom then. We had a very tiny bit of Zoom then. Very rarely used. Little did I know I was going to be stuck on Zoom for 2.5 years, full on. And I said, Chandralaya was one of the first schools in Melbourne to jump on the Zoom bandwagon. And I put a little business plan together, and I sent out a comms to all of my community. I said, my student community, I said, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to stop the classes. We're going to run these classes. I'm going to shift the curriculum to an online curriculum. We go on Zoom. We create a space for the kids and the elders, and we work this through. You are with me in this journey. Let's do this together. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And 2.5 years, we went on. I probably finished half my learnings there, my teachings there. And I am so proud of every student, both young and wise, because they really stepped up. Because they realized health was a priority.
Right.
And they all got so fit in those 2.5 years. I think to think about it, 2.5 years is a long time to stay online. And with snippets of us doing this lockdown thing, that was like a little breeze coming through and then shutting us back. But I think that really built excessive amounts of resilience in all of us, all my students and myself. Say, okay, we're going to come out of this super strong, and we're going to be in a studio space. After which, none of my students would ever want to go on Zoom. They were like, we want that physical interaction.
Right.
We want to see that energy passing through. We do Zoom once in a while. I think it's good to keep that that sort of technology element of it. But it opened up a lot of opportunities. It opened up overseas opportunities to collaborate from a digital perspective. It opened up opportunities for students from South America, America to take classes with me. It opened up opportunities to be the teaching artist online with Kennedy Center. So there were so many opportunities. I think with adversity, opportunities arise, and I think it's important for us to open our mindset and see what can we do here that's going to create betterment for all of us. So that's really how we survive. So yeah.
And do your kids also dance?
My little one, I've got one. Yes, he dances. Yeah, he does, but he does break. He does break, but he does play Indian instrument, the mridangam. So he's learning that as well. But I think it's good. I'm happy for him to explore other art forms. I'm not one of those people who has to say you have to learn this. Whatever works for you, that's what I told him.
And with Chandralaya, do you have any particular events or any particular moments that really stand out for you in your journey that you're just extremely proud of?
Oh, many. My yearly concerts with my students is something I look forward to. I see the growth. I see the maturity. Some of them were like 6 years old, and now they're all like 16. And I feel like I've just handheld them through all these years and will be holding their hands, through the phases of their lives. That's a very proud moment for me as a guru, just watching them shine and thrive. I think I always hold the annual day very close to my heart. It's my way of showcasing my students to the community. It's also the collaborations that I've done with other artists that I'm proud of, that I'm putting Bharatanatyam in the map with other genres. I'm part of that little puzzle, and so the contribution is there. And just every year I have my mom's photo always on the side, and I always feel that she's very present when we have these shows, and she's super proud of what I've done and what I'm continuing to do and what we've created here. That collective energy, I sense that every time, so I'm very proud of it.
Oh, I'm sure she is, because being in a different country and not only just performing the art forms that you've learned back home, but also teaching it to the next generation. I think you're just doing such an amazing job of that. Because I also understand from a community perspective, a lot of parents who live in different countries, they're also very sort of scared that their children will not know the same cultures, the same experiences that they have. And people like you can just give that sort of knowledge, that sort of experience, and build that community that they might not have otherwise received. So that's amazing.
Thank you. Yes.
And I think that's also something that you're trying to do with your new brand as well, POC Beauty. I would love to know more about that. Like, how did the idea come about? Like, I love that it's based on the fact that we are proud of color, and that it celebrates diversity in the way we look, the way our skins are built. So just talk me through that.
Yeah, so Proud of Color was spawned based on Chandralaya. When I got introduced to the community and started talking to everybody, and I felt that self-care and education around melanated skin issues was not available, or is still not quite strong in our minds. And I said, as somebody who's been learning dance, I've always packed on layers of makeup to be on stage. And we've had to learn how to do our own makeup, at the same time take care of our own skin if we were to push ourselves in front of an audience to perform. And that took a long time to understand how to take care of yourself inside out, choose the right products, eat the right food, get into a routine to take care of yourself. And that's something we pride at Chandralaya, that we teach that holistic well-being. Now, having thought that, and I said, okay, like there's a real gap here in Australia, because there's not many brands that are supporting only melanated skin requirements.
Right.
We do have the big brands like L'Oreal and Rimmel, which has some shades, but in terms of your particular issues like hyperpigmentation, discoloration, dryness, all of those things that we feel on an everyday basis is not catered for. So I said, why don't this idea was I was mulling over it ever since COVID. And just like that aha moment, 23 is when, so the company was started in 23.
Okay.
It only launched in 2024 December. Okay. So it took a while to get through everything, the planning aspects of it, and how do I want to structure this, what are some of the products that I want to focus on. And so we launched in December 2024 with our first product, and we've got so much growth in terms of lining up the different products. We've got both skincare, and we're actually getting into the cosmetics as well, which is a very challenging space when you have heaps of information,
right,
but unsure what's going to work for you. So POC is there for you as a person of color, to help with your requirements, both skincare and cosmetics. So hopefully we will have a simple line to offer by the end of this year, and continue to work on different elements of it. At the core of POC is about really ingredient focused skincare infused beauty. So really making sure that what you put on your skin, you're going to be comfortable with, and it's really good for you. It's not going to do the adverse thing. And it takes a while to work on those ingredients and understand how how it's going to work. So I do have a community that helps me with testing the products, especially on multiple skin tones. It has to work. So we take our time with our products because it has to work.
Right.
So at the heart of it is ethically sourced ingredients, really focused on ingredients, really focused on skincare infused beauty, and representation. I would love to see pork in retail stores when you walk in and say, okay, I've got something that's going to work for me. I'm just going to go there and see what's the new thing. So that's what Proud of Color is all about.
Oh, I love that, because when I read about it and I saw that you started this business, I was just thinking to myself, how did dance and skincare, like what's the correlation? And now you're just saying that you apply makeup and then this moment goes, yeah, that makes sense. That's how you were thinking. But I am so excited about what's next for POC Beauty, and how it goes, and I would love to see it on the shelves, because definitely you do face that issue when you go to a store and you're just trying to find that right shade or those right ingredients that would just sit well with your skin.
Yes.
So I love that you're trying to cater to a very prominent demographic of the Australian community. And now that you've started this venture, you've got Chandralaya, you've got your family. How are you managing all of that?
It's hard work. I'm not going to lie about that. I think I think building businesses is a journey, and I think the advice I was given by my mentor is build it slow. Take time and build it slow. And there's a lot of lessons learned from Chandralaya that I'm carrying it forward into Proud of Color Beauty. And I also do a lot of speaking gigs and participate in panels. And I think the storytelling is very important. The more you talk about it, the more people start to engage in that kind of a conversation, and we can change things around in terms of how you pursue beauty, how you pursue art, and the synergies with the two. And I think for me, it's build it slow, take your time. We're not in a hurry, and it's about balancing. So for me, Chandralaya is a stabilized space, but it's also growing, and POC is also in a very early stage. So I think it's about, the calendars have to be organized.
Right.
Things change, but it's, and I think my partner is instrumental in helping with that and really really balancing that on a day-to-day basis. My little one's also very supportive. If I have to go for an event, he understands that, okay, mom's actually in the work mode. And I spend the time, like when we have days when I just shut down and I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I really force myself to not do anything, not think, because it's always about that to-do list growing.
Right.
And I've come to an understanding that the to-do list will never end.
Right.
You've just got to draw that line, and you've just got to really. Otherwise, what happens is you get into a burnout mode, and I've had that before, and I never want to go back to that, because one of the things I don't want to compromise is your health. Because as a small business owner, you are the forefront of the business, and if you're not in a healthy state, both mentally and physically, the business is not going to run. So I think that's something I've told myself. I tell myself every day. And that's how sort of the balance comes into play.
Thank you so much for that, and just talking to me. Before we wrap up, I'd love to ask, is there a certain piece of advice that you have for any woman who's watching this or listening to this? Maybe they've been living here for a long time, or they just moved here, or they're thinking about moving. What would you say to them?
Okay, be open-minded. There are endless opportunities when you make change. Change is not negative, and change is inevitable. We change all the time. We face changes all the time. Embrace the change and make the positives out of it. Just see the positives out of it more than the negatives. It's about looking at the glass half empty or half full. You know what I mean? So that's really the perception. So change your perception, and everything around you will change for the better. And the most important thing I tell women is comparison is the thief of joy. Stop comparing yourself, because you are unique. You have been brought into this earth for a purpose, and you have a journey to find that purpose. So whatever is due for you will be for you. It's not going to go to the girl next door or your neighbor. So don't compare yourself, because compare yourself, you actually you don't grow. So let everybody grow around you, and you will grow as well. That's my piece of advice.
Well, that's beautiful. I don't think we could have ended on a more positive note.
Beautiful.
So thank you for that. And thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Indian Women Abroad. If you liked it, please like, comment, share, and